Hey squad, it's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to hop in and have a conversation about something that I would consider a red flag for the African world, or the larger African world in general, and that is the question of, is Nigeria shrinking? And when I mean shrinking, I mean, is their footprint, their heft, their global power, their economic power, is it less today than it was a decade ago? I like to stay on top of a lot of trends and stats here at the Bantu Sun, and one of the worrying stats that I came across was annual real GDP per capita growth. This is just a general metrics that allows me to basically put a flag in the ground or outpost in the ground and track a trend. And this one is on the economic development per person. Sometimes GDP, you can hide the nuances, especially if you have a growing population. If you have more people doing the same low status work, it'll look like your economy is growing, but in actuality, you might be stagnant. So, one thing I noticed about Nigeria's real GDP per capita growth, and the latest stats I had was up to 2020. So, between 2014 and 2020, yeah, the growth didn't cross the zero line. There was no positive growth over that time frame from 2014 to 2020, and that is concerning. So when you see a boxing match, right? One thing they have is weight classes. So when I look at Nigeria, I put Nigeria in its proper weight class. And Nigeria is not a lightweight. It is a super heavyweight. It's one of the largest countries in Africa, as well as the most populous country in Africa. When I talk about Nigeria and my expectations and fulfillment that I expect to see of Nigeria one day, it is not on the par of Armenia or Mongolia. When I compare Nigeria, I'm comparing Nigeria against China or the United States. It may not have the continental size, but it definitely has that footprint, considering that it's demographically superior and economically has more capacity than any of its surrounding neighbors. Almost an entire country is wealthy in one form or another, demographically rich. Everyone speaks to the industriousness of the Nigerians. When Nigerians migrate to what UK, America, they are some of the most accomplished individuals in that country, bringing ingenuity, hard work, and grit to their new host countries. And of course, they're just an apple from the tree. We know that Nigeria is full of industrious people, which comes a lot from that large population center. It's rich in natural gas. It's rich in oil, petroleum. It's rich in palm oil. It's a relatively highly fertile country. The rich Niger River Delta, the Niger Delta, the oil rivers as they call it, because it's so rich in palm oil, as well as the emptying of that Niger River coming through the country, which starts in Guinea and travels across West Africa. But Nigeria is pretty much the center of West Africa. So I wanted to put the chart up just to compare Nigeria with some of its counterparts. And they're not really counterparts because, like I said, there's very few countries in Africa that I put on the level of a Nigeria. I judge Nigeria on a global scale. And of course, Africa has their standouts. Ethiopia has one of the best growth rates in the world on a per capita basis. They are astonishing. Ghana is another one, another great one. People like to kind of compare those two. I'm not one, but Ghana is another great standout of economic progress through the last decade. But as you can see, Nigeria is basically their numbers are cowering in the shadows of the economic growth rates of these fellow two African countries. And this is saying a lot. Nigeria just had an election where President Bola Tinubu was elected. So congratulations to Nigeria having a successful election. But as I said before, you really expect these numbers to hop out the screen a little bit more. Nigeria also just built one of their first oil refineries, which is pushed through because of so many successful industrial Nigerians. Of course, the country's richest man, Aliko Dangote, head of the Dangote Group conglomerate, they just opened up an oil refinery in Lekki, Nigeria. And that's going to be a big plus because one of the things that I talked about, constantly complain about, is you have all this West African oil, Gabon, Nigeria, Angola. But guess what? When it comes to the value add aspect, the refining aspect, where is that oil refined at? It's not in Africa. So Africa building oil refineries, that value added skill will go great in adding to the economies as well as being a better neighbor of Nigeria towards other African countries that's going to need affordable oil that may not be as rich as those on that South Atlantic coast. Another aspect that you want to talk about is the infrastructure of where these resources are going. Europe is, for whatever they're saying on their goals of green energy, etc., they have no problem with you having green energy. But Europe are continuously investing in developing infrastructure to drink the resource milkshake of Africa. And there's a Moroccan pipeline and a pipeline through Algeria that Europe is funding right now that supposedly takes some natural gas from Nigeria up through Algeria, from Nigeria up through Algeria, which lead on to European markets. And of course, sell what you can while you can, but you will hope that this pipeline runs two ways because you also want to nourish those markets in sub-Saharan Africa with some of that rich Algerian natural gas as well, and not just continually extract from Nigeria. So there are going to be some changes economically, and then Nigeria is moving in the right directions on some things, but where its capacity is, Nigeria should be a headline in any African article, almost any African article, just because of what their development can do and how that can spur on further successes without. I expect Nigeria to be the driving force, basically other economies swimming in its wake through its demographic and economic growth. But because the economic growth isn't there, it's an elephant that we do not want to see fall behind in the development of Africa, because it's not going to be a lackluster development for Nigeria. Is not going to be good for anybody. Those citizens are going to start trying to find other ways to earn livelihood. It's going to call migrant waves. It's going to be called various other activities that come in, and basically it's not good for anybody. So what you want to do is you want to roll all of these industrious young talent into the economy. And one more thing I wanted to harp on is Nigeria is part of the Commonwealth. This is a great opportunity. As I said, I see this as a peer of the United States as far as power potential and basically the way they can project onto the world. That's a relationship straight to the UK. When I talk about appealing to your competitors' greed, Nigeria is one of the few countries that can go to England and say, go to the UK and say, you're really close to the US. And we want a relationship like that, or even better. A lot of UK companies, Shell, Unilever, HSBC, like we have a spot for these countries deep in the heart of our own. This is what the Nigerians can say to UK and say, we see our future hand in hand with you. And that will create such an open access and a partnership that UK will be a fool to turn their back on. Because believe it or not, Nigeria's booming population is booming more. And by 2050, it's expected to surpass the United States in population. So there's about 200 million Nigerians, I believe now, and about 350 to 400 million people in ECOWAS in general, which means that Nigeria is almost 1 out of 2 West Africans. That is a deal and a market that the UK wouldn't want to pass up on. They just need the open invite, the access, and the Nigerians have to be adroit and savvy enough to be able to cash in on that relationship. So, as I said, this is just a red flag I want to put out there because it's very concerning if Nigeria is not hopping off the page in growth rates. As I said, Ethiopia is handling business despite a lot of issues that's going on in Ethiopia, as everybody know about Tigray, um, and other groups that Ethiopia is trying to bring into the fold. But Nigeria, I definitely expected to see a more fire coming out the gate. So that's my thoughts. If you have any insights, on a comment below, or what you currently think is going on with Nigeria, please comment below. Thank you for joining us today. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And until next time, take care. Bantu up.